Welcome to another episode of the Empowered Half Hour. And I have my new Scottish friend with me, Mark MacNicol. And yeah, hi. And he is a mind coach, a writer, and creator of the Anonymous Drama, and which is a program. And before we started to hit record, we were doing our pre-show discussion, which we always do. And he had mentioned this thing that I found really fascinating. He has started to explore the difference in how it lands with people and what it actually means between mental health and emotional well-being. I just want to start there. Mark, what's your background? Well, first of all, welcome to the show officially. I know we waved. And then what's your backstory to that? What made that a topic that you really have been wanting to dig into?
So where do we start? I mean, it's probably because we've only got half an hour. Obviously, it's going to be a challenge for me to kind of drill into the backstory. So I'll probably just jump straight into the conversation that we had and then just see where it goes type thing.
Sure, that's perfect for me.
So we deliver two programs. One is for groups. It's called Anonymous Drama. It's like drama therapy for people who usually don't have any interest in drama. And the other one is called Find Your Mentor. And that is not for groups. That's for individuals in their own time, at their own pace, via their smartphone, going through the program. I'm a fan of AI. I'm an early adopter of AI. I'm enthusiastic and very positive when it comes to exploring ways that AI can add value to my life personally and professionally. Now, AI is incorporated into both of those programs in the form of a custom GPT. So there's a custom GPT attached to Anonymous Drama. There's a custom GPT attached to Find Your Mentor. Now, the custom GPT that's attached to Find Your Mentor is designed and configured to be an AI representation of your inner mentor.
Wow.
Because
that's pretty deep. Like just for the listener, so you have customized the experience of the AI to take on the persona of the person.
So all of the work in both groups, in both programs, the group program, Anonymous Drama, Find Your Mentor for individuals, there are a few components which run across both programs. Number one, there's a conversation going on inside all of our heads 24/7, and 99.9% of the population think of that conversation as their thoughts, but we explore an alternative view within the program. And that alternative view is that actually when you start to become aware of the conversation and you start to break it down and listen to it, you start to realize that actually, unfortunately, the vast majority of it is negative. So in the programs, we've broken it down into, so there are some central characters that we explore. And this is my background as a novelist, playwright, director. This is where this comes from. So we have the protagonist, who is you,
cool.
And then we have the inner critic, who is constant source of negativity, disruption, all the bad stuff. And then we have the inner mentor, who's the constant source of love, compassion, positivity, all the good stuff. Now, in the Find Your Mentor program, the custom GPT, I created it. It's had thousands of documents uploaded into its knowledge base. It's got detailed instructions on how it should conduct itself. And I have stress tested it for the last 12 months. We've had multiple participants going through a beta test. We've had internal and external evaluations done. I myself personally use this product every day. Whenever I hear any inner chat, I immediately pick up my smartphone and I log in, check in, and basically say to my mentor, this is what the inner chat is saying to me. And then I get a response, which is basically the opposite of the type of bullshit that you're going to get from your negative inner chat.
You know, one of the things that you're saying that I think is really interesting to maybe dive into a little bit for the listener is how powerful the negative thoughts and inner critic really are. I think kind of as you're alluding to, so much of that is on autopilot. And so with like the programs that you're creating, it gives you a point to check in and start breaking down those patterns and seeing how much it really is running you. But I think I would love you to share your expertise with the listeners as far as like how much of their thoughts are running on autopilot and like maybe a negative or critique manner, and how is that impacting their life if they don't catch it, if they don't take an opportunity to catch it and monitor and manage it?
Well, potentially you're going to end up dead. You're going to end up.
I laugh, but it's true.
I mean,
it's funny, but I'm just like, wow. I mean, get straight to the point.
The stakes couldn't be higher. We've been working since 2016 in prisons, residential rehabs, community rehabs. Most of the people I've worked with on the group program are people who are either in recovery or they are at risk of entering or re-entering the justice system. So since 2016, over 5,000 participants have been through the group program.
Okay.
And for people in recovery or for people in the justice system, quite often the inner chat literally is the difference between life or death. But certainly even people who are not in recovery or not in the justice system, so me and you, for example, the other thing about addictions, I don't know anybody that doesn't have addictions. Your addictions might be sugar, coffee, refined carbs,
Work, in an everyday
work,
person. Yeah.
sex, status, money, basically everything in your world generates a conversation inside your head 24/7. And it's not your thoughts. The word thoughts is problematic because it's not your thoughts. And once you actually start to put the conversation under the spotlight and become aware of it, you start to hear it saying, you're a loser, etc. Like today, it'll say to you, listen, forget about the podcast with Becca, go home, lie on the couch, eat some Doritos and watch Netflix. You've
That's
had a hard
hilarious.
day. The inner critic voice inside all of our heads has got something to say about everything in our world and every person in our world 24/7, and the vast majority of it is negative. So in relation to the mental health versus emotional
Yes.
well-being conversation, I recently started to get pushback from people round about the idea of AI, a custom GPT, supporting people with their mental health. Now, well, as a side conversation, I do find it interesting that I'm trying not to be defensive and I'm trying to have conversations with these individuals, whether it be on social media or email or in person. And I'm asking them, okay, so for me to get an understanding of where we're at here, could you tell me what is your understanding of what AI is? What is your understanding of what chat GPT is? What is your understanding of what a custom GPT is? And invariably, the response that I get is they don't really know what any of those things are.
Sure.
So my response would be, well, on that basis, how can you form an opinion if you don't really know what they are? But what I discovered was that when I stopped using the phrase mental health and I started using the phrase emotional well-being, I started to basically receive no pushback. So when I was talking to people about a custom GPT supporting participants with their emotional well-being, everybody was fine with it. And
That's really fascinating.
what I started to realise is the term mental health comes with a lot of baggage. And one of the things that a lot of people attach to that term is it's the domain of professionals. So, for example, psychiatrists, psychotherapists, mental health nurses, even big pharma and the medications that they produce for various mental health challenges, consciously or subconsciously, many of us associate the term mental health with mental health professionals and medication. So that's why there was this knee-jerk reaction to the notion of a custom GPT getting involved in those areas. And when I replaced the term mental health with emotional well-being, I basically started to meet no resistance because everybody was cool with it. And it became a source of sadness and frustration for me because I realised that there are a lot of people out there who don't really understand that their mental health is their own personal responsibility. And of course, this is not me in any way diminishing the role of mental health professionals or even big pharma. On a case by case basis, they have an important role to play, but each of us must make decisions for ourselves relating to whether or not we will engage with specific mental health professionals, whether or not we will take specific medications in a way that we do with our physical health. Because if you look at your physical health, everybody understands that that's your responsibility. So yes, there are various physical health experts that we can engage with, but nobody would say that our physical health is their responsibility. Everybody accepts that we all know that there are things that we can do round about diet, exercise, cold water exposure, sauna. There's loads of good stuff that we can do that's going to have a positive impact on our physical health, and we accept that. But unfortunately for us, when it comes to mental health, I feel like too many of us almost kind of pass responsibility for our mental health to others.
No, what I was trying to say is I would love to talk about that a little bit more because agency is a big deal. And I'm so happy you started talking about that because I think people don't realize that it is their, like you said, their responsibility to use their own agency for their mental health and to start to understand it. Like mental health, in my opinion, is a journey from understanding trauma, little t trauma, big T trauma, how that impacted you, where your depression's coming from, who is it related to, where, like there's all these different mapping games. And I'm sure we could probably talk about this topic for hours, but I would love for you maybe just to share some of your wisdom with the listeners as far as like maybe how important is it to have self agency, or maybe share a tip with them of something they can do to take back that control and to start to explore it.
Both the group program and the individual program have various tools and techniques and exercises. Right. I think one of the really interesting things about the group program, and the link to both programs is in my bio.
Yeah, it'll end up in the show notes. So guys, listeners, what Mark's talking about are his programs. But if you're interested in what he's saying and you want to gain these tools, that'll be in the show notes. So we'll
have a look at the link to the Stand Store that's got both of these programs. There's probably a couple of things that I would highlight about each of them, which makes them quite unique. On the group program, the reason it's called anonymous drama, where the anonymity comes from, if you're a participant in a session, everything is done using fictional characters. So that means awesome. That, if Becca comes into a session and Becca wants to talk about mum's alcoholism and the impact that it had on Becca as a child in terms of neglect or whatever, then the facilitator is going to stop you. Instead, they're going to say, okay, Becca, let's talk about this fictional character's mum's alcoholism and the impact that mum's alcoholism had on this fictional character. Now, what that does is it creates a very unique space. The program has actually been studied and evaluated by some universities because of the uniqueness of the anonymity element, because nobody in the sessions knows the difference between what's lived experience or what's fiction. So the group program is very special. It creates a very unique environment, and the feedback that we've had over the years from participants is that basically they're able to do kind of self-awareness exploration type work and unpack areas that are perhaps emotionally charged or possibly even triggering in a normal type environment. In fact, in some cases, participants are actually exploring things that they've never spoken about because it's just too traumatic. So they've never spoken about it to friends, family, psychotherapists, support staff, etc. But when they're able to play with fictional characters and fictional scenarios, they are able to actually explore certain things. So the anonymity element is very unique within the group program, and people can have a look at it, and they can see the session. There's a session plan. Each facilitator goes through a kind of induction and training process on the step-by-step session plan, the icebreakers, the games, the hot seat exercises, the improvisations, and then these group programs actually conclude with, they usually run for about 16 weeks, and they usually conclude with a live audience event where volunteers from the group, because it's not compulsory, but volunteers from the group will read sections of the script for friends and family and support staff and the local community. And those live events are very, very special, very inspiring.
Very transformational, I would assume.
Very transformational, not just for the people on stage, but for the people in the audience also. So that's the group program. And then probably, like we spoke about earlier, for me, one of the unique elements of the program for individuals, Find Your Mentor, is the fact that via your smartphone, you have an AI representation of your inner mentor. Now, we know through the work that we do that 99.9% of the participants that come through our programs don't even have an understanding of what an inner mentor is, which is so sad.
Yes.
The idea of people going about their business being bombarded by constant negative inner chat, thinking it's their thoughts when it's not, but not even being aware of the fact that they have someone who is in their corner. They have the inner mentor. And it's interesting. So you don't need to come through any of our programs, you don't need to be spiritual. You don't need to be religious. it works. I mean, it works if you're religious, it works if you're spiritual, but it also works if you're agnostic or atheist. However, what we're discussing here, these entities obviously have different names within different cultures
Yes.
and traditions. So, for example, the obvious one is the inner critic and the inner mentor representing God and the devil in the Christian
Yes.
framework. In the Buddhist framework, it would be ego and the inner mentor, as they would call it. And then even in a non-religious, non-spiritual context, it could be elements of your kind of personality.
Yes.
So these are different things, and different traditions and cultures have different names for them. But in our program, we try to keep it simple and not get bogged down in too much jargon
I
and
agree. And in a lot of
vocabulary.
my teachings, I try to simplify it too, because at the end
Yeah.
of the day, we're all human beings trying to, and as facilitators, we're trying to get other human beings to just live in peace and joy and get to feel. In my work too, I do a lot of trauma informed work, but really the reason I get so geeky into it is because this stuff lives in your nervous system, like you're alluding to. If you have this like secret trauma that you keep in yourself, it's slowly eating at you, right? It lives in your nervous system, and by creating programs like you're offering, and it's so beautiful to be able to release it through storytelling, right? That is such a gift to give somebody, because to your point, it might not be something that they want to talk in a traditional therapy setting, right? It's really personal. It might be embarrassing. There's all these, they might feel like they're exposing somebody, or there's so much that gets, like you said, like intertangled. And then also feelings start that may or may not be true start becoming facts. And like it, everything just gets so messy. So being able to provide people with a platform to do it through storytelling, I mean, as a playwright and stuff like that, I mean, you shared that you've had several different types of writing. You know the value of writing and what it can do for a person. And then having that last stage of, like, pun intended, like to go on a stage and share that, it gives the person the physical opportunity to release it and transmute it into something that serves them versus sabotage them. So I think the work that you're doing is like absolutely fascinating. What I would like to ask next is, how have you seen this empower, that like the transformation? How have you seen the transformation empower the people that have come through your programs?
I mean, unfortunately, for me, the biggest measure of success is the participant alive, because in terms of lived experience, I grew up with an alcoholic mother and father, and my brother was in and out of the justice system, and he went on to die of a heroin overdose.
Oh, geez.
So my lived experience as a family member touched by addiction and the justice system is probably one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about the work and motivated to support people. But in the 8, 9 years that I've been doing this work, unfortunately, the statistics, the reality of the situation is that most people don't make it. If you are in recovery from problematic alcohol or drug addiction, unfortunately, only the minority will make it and the majority will die.
Yeah.
So when it comes to whether it be the group program, Anonymous Drama, or the program for individuals, Find Your Mentor, my biggest measure of success is the person being alive. On a scale, obviously a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being stay alive. There's various other elements that we can track round about evaluations. For example, a lot of those live events, there are family members in the audience who are estranged and maybe haven't spoken to that individual for 2, 3, 4 years,
Yeah.
etc. Because often when it comes to addicts, often there are fractured or estranged family and friend relationships. So a lot of those are being repaired, and
That's beautiful. I empathize with the why behind your work too. I'm the sole survivor of my original family nucleus. My mom passed away at the age of 46 from a medication overdose, which was accidental. It was prescribed, but still related. My father passed away a decade later from prescription withdrawal. From, again, it was handled by a doctor, but wasn't offered a step down. He went through withdrawal, had a heart attack. And then my brother suffered with alcoholism, and he did not pass away of that. But the unfortunate piece is that when he did get sober, he just passed away within this year. So it's been really challenging. But I've watched his journey of sobriety, relapse, sobriety. And the sad part is that when he finally got his footing, he got in a car accident, and a week or so later had a seizure while he was in a pool and he drowned. And so I think that I shared the tragedy too, because in my whole family thing, everyone passed away so young they didn't get to live. So that's kind of like when you said like alive, I think that maybe some listeners might think, well, I'm already alive. But even if you're alive, like, are you really alive? You know, like, are you just hanging on? Are you just gripping to it, or are you really living? And I'd love to just kind of like hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a funny one because when I think about the work that we do, the vast majority, we're a small charity, we're a not-for-profit. Most of our work is funded by either subscriptions, donations, benefactors, grant funding, which means that the nature of funding is such that the funding comes from a specific cohort, like addicts or offenders or
Yes.
ex-offenders, etc. So the reason we work with people in the justice space or people in recovery is because that's obviously where the funding comes from, and a lot of those individuals have an urgent need.
Yeah.
However, the reality of the situation is that the nature of what we are talking about when it comes to suffering can be applied as much to me or you or anyone as it can to an addict or an offender, because the human condition is such that all of us 24/7 are being bombarded by a conversation which, to varying degrees, is at best not helpful and at worst potentially very, very damaging to us. But there's people listening to this just now who think, wow, that's great. It's great to see people like Mark working with addicts and working with offenders, etc. It's really, really important work, but they don't think of themselves as being in need of intervention or able to benefit from intervention. But as far as I'm concerned, what was the Buddha's last words? We must each seek our own salvation diligently.
Yes.
And all of the work that I do starts with me. The underlying objective of everything that I do professionally is about relationship with self. So my relationship with myself and trying to support others when it comes to their relationship with self. Because if we can make progress when it comes to relationship with self, then so many of our individual problems as well as our collective community problems can be resolved.
Yeah, that's beautiful. We are at the bottom of the 30 minutes. I knew this interview was going to go super fast just before we hit record. It is the empowered half hour. So I always like to ask my guests to like share an empowering statement with the listeners. How would you like to sign off? What could you share with them?
Off the top of my head,
Yes.
the quality of your life is dictated by the focus of your attention.
That's a mic drop moment right there. It was beautiful. Well, Mark, I feel like I have a new friend. Thank you so much for coming on the Empowered Half Hour. It was great to have you.
Thanks for having me.